Hello and welcome to the Backlot 605 podcast. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Casey Kelderman. Joined with me, as always, is my co-host Brian Mensing. Brian, how are you doing today?
Can't complain for a nice, wonderful, hot day out there today. Very humid.
It is a nice warm day here in South Dakota. I see you are not wearing a tin cap today in honor
I
of.
should have.
You should have. You're just wearing the regular old baseball cap, but that's okay. At least it's a Minnesota Twins one. That's all right with us. But Brian, we are in week number 2 of our M. Night Shyamalan series here, talking about Signs, and we are joined on this episode by Clay Keller, the host of the ScreenDrafts podcast. Clay, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you guys for having me on. I sort of feel like I am visiting the great Upper Midwest here, talking to you guys. Yeah, it's nice. It's. I assume I've not been outside today yet. I'm assuming it's an unbearably hot day in Los Angeles, but I I feel like it must be inherently. Although I grew up in Minnesota, I know that it is extremely hot in the summers up in that part of the country. But I'm enjoying the cool breeze coming off of the South Dakota from you guys.
Nice. Yeah, it's amazing how many people don't really understand how hot the Midwest really does get up here during the summer.
Yeah, and humid. It's like Florida. It's awful.
Yeah.
That's what we're feeling right now. It's nasty humid out here. So, Clay, before we get into the episode, let's talk a little bit about ScreenDrafts. I know we do have quite a few listeners that are crossovers with you, and that's how we found your show as well. But for those who don't know what ScreenDrafts is, can you tell us a little bit about it, what you guys do over there?
Sure thing. Yeah, ScreenDrafts is a show that's very difficult to explain, and I do it a little bit differently every time I'm asked to. It's it is we use the word draft, but that is not really what the show is about at all. It's a competitive list, collaboratively competitive list making show where you get 2 guest GMs, and they are alternating putting picks on a single definitive best of list for a given topic. They each have a veto. They can knock something off, the other person plays, and it goes back and forth. And at the end of the show, we've got a 7 title list that is that represents both guests and the show. It is incontrovertible. It is definitive, and that's how we arrive at that. It's a good time. It's kind of a hybrid movie discussion game type thing. A little bit of strategy. We got a lot of really cool guests, a lot of recurring fan favorites. We've got a fun little community on Patreon, so it's a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite shows to listen to. It's absolutely in my opinion, it's a must for movie fans. It makes you angry and happy at the same time. But yeah, before we get into the box office, one more thing. You guys haven't done an M. Night draft yet, have you?
We have not done an M. Night draft. No, Brian Duffield, director, screenwriter, who's been on the show before, which just DM'd me like 10 minutes ago. He must have seen that I logged Signs on Letterboxd or something, but he DM'd me. I was like, when is the M. Night Shyamalan draft? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I like to do a wide, array of topics on the show. And it would be very easy just to do directors every episode.
Yeah.
So I try to space out the kind of big, interesting directors, maybe do a handful a year. M. Night would be a great one. We're going to talk about him and his filmography, and it is it's basically a perfect ScreenDrafts filmography where there's a couple of classics, a few big hits, a few major flops, and then a handful of movies that are sort of in the middle that people either love and go to bat for or hate. It would be almost impossible to predict final outcome for M. Night Shyamalan draft. Now that Old has come out, that might be a good time to do it. I looked I looked at IMDb because I was thinking about this 15 minutes ago. And listed on IMDb as an upcoming project is something called Labor of Love, which is apparently a script he wrote 20 years ago and has been languishing in development hell. And that, according to IMDb, that is next up on his list. So I feel like maybe after that comes out, kind of a full circle point to do an M. Night draft. But it would be, regardless of when we do it, it would be would be a hoot. It would be quite something.
Yeah, I was going to say he's kind of the perfect candidate for that type of show and that type of draft. I mean, even last week doing our show with Brian and myself, we had very differing opinions on Lady in the Water. So just with that one movie alone and everything else in his filmography, it's just a cataclysm of just massive amounts of love and hate for one filmography. So I think that's something I am looking forward to for you guys to do in the future.
And popular opinion has changed on him so drastically multiple times. It is just a constant roller coaster, the public's relationship to him and his work. So yeah, he would be very interesting, and always interesting movies to talk about.
He's where I see, like, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, but nobody's definition of what the good, the bad, and the ugly is would ever be definitive across anybody's opinion of him.
Absolutely.
All right, Brian, let's jump into this. Are you ready for the box office for this week?
Yeah. I've seen most of these.
Well, that's good. We do have Mr. Shyamalan in the box office here again, but first we're kicking it off. Number one is the new release of The Suicide Squad, $26.5 million for the James Gunn reboot sequel hybrid, I guess. A little bit of both for this movie here. Again, 26.5, also streaming on HBO Max as well for this movie here. But what are your guys' thoughts on this number, 26.5? Not too bad for an opening weekend here, still kind of lingering towards the end, hopefully, of the pandemic, but still in that HBO Max dual release for this movie here. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
I think with the dual release, I think this is actually a pretty solid number because, I mean, we know that HBO Max has a very large audience base. There's going to be a lot of those people that are going to watch that movie at home. But this is definitely one of those movies you need to watch on a big screen just because it is definitely an over-the-top James Gunn film that you have to be able to experience on the largest screen possible.
Yeah, I have not had the opportunity to see this yet. I had a packed weekend, so I'm kind of debating. I've been very comfortable going back to theaters. People in LA have been pretty good about following all the protocols, and the mask usage is pretty on point when you go to the AMC or whatever. But I've just been busy the last couple of weeks, so I'm debating if I want to make time to go to the theater for this or watch it probably in a couple of chunks on HBO Max. But people have been telling me that I really ought to go catch that. Well, just now, I got that opinion, and I've had a few people tell me it's definitely a big screen movie. So I'm going to go try and check it out. I don't have any opinion on box office numbers these days. I just don't know. There's so many factors that the box office has never had to deal with before that I think it's going to take a little while to kind of readjust to the new normal in terms of box office numbers. But 26.5, especially with this wave, I think this is. It seems to be, at least the mood out there is a little bit more hesitancy within the last like 7 or 8 days, kind of creeping back in. So I think as these waves go up and down, and people, it's not going to be a clean end of the pandemic, and now everything's back to. It's going to be kind of going in waves. So this is probably attributable to that, also to the at-home thing. Although the at-home thing hasn't seemed to hobble other Warner Brothers releases drastically yet. Stuff like Those Who Wish Me Dead were always going to be middle to lower performers. So I'm very curious to kind of look back in a year or two at these numbers. But Suicide Squad, I am definitely down to see it. Haven't gotten to it yet. You guys know my co-host Ryan Marker is a big superhero comic book movie fan, and he's saying it's perhaps one of, if not the best ever made. So
wow.
High praise from Mr. Ryan Marker.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those ones where it definitely has the comic book feel, but it definitely has the James Gunn's fingerprints all over it.
I'm unfortunately I am lukewarm on this movie. I didn't love it, but I think the box office is kind of indicative of what we're seeing with a lot of the HBO Max stuff, especially for kind of the bigger budget ones. Of they're going to hit really hard that first week, and then subsequent rewatches are going to be at home on HBO Max, because I feel like a lot of people, if they want to see it in the theater, they're going to see it in the theater once, and then if you want to rewatch it in a week or so, you're going to watch it at home probably. So I think this number will it'll hit that 60% drop pretty fast after this, perhaps next week already with Free Guy coming out. And I think there is another big release coming out next week too as well. But number 2 this week though is Disney's Jungle Cruise, $15.69 million. Dwayne Johnson, Emily Blunt, again hitting that kind of dual release, available on Disney Plus, which I believe is this the last one doing that premiere access?
That's my understanding. Yes,
that's what I heard as well.
Yes, yeah. Which at least then that means that hopefully Disney can get the rest of the other public things out of the way and start moving forward.
Yeah, Jungle Cruise. $30 on Premiere Access.
Mm-hmm.
That seems that has always just seemed hilariously steep to me. Do you guys see Jungle Cruise?
I did. I actually saw I did a double feature that Saturday I went to Old, followed by Jungle Cruise that same day. That it honestly, for me personally, it's one of those ones where it's like, oh, Disney is attempting to make another movie based off of a Disney ride, not an actual like story or anything like that. This actually, for me personally, was a lot better than I expected it to be, and a part of that attributes to casting the chemistry between Emily Blunt and Dwayne Johnson. Jesse Plemons is fantastic in it, that sort of thing. His name is escaping me, but the gentleman that plays the brother is great in it. So I think a lot of it deals with the fact that the story itself is okay, but I think it's all the chemistry of all the actors on screen that is what actually makes this movie a lot, like I said, a lot better than I expected it to be.
Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't huge on this, and it's one of those ones where it's like all the elements. There's not really any bad ingredients in this movie. I think it was just it when it was all whipped up together, it just didn't. It left a bad taste in my mouth. There's something with in the script with the pacing, the editing. A lot of the scenes feel very choppy. There isn't a lot of flow from scene to scene for me. And then that kind of it hurt the momentum. It didn't really build for me. But that's an interesting double feature of like water-based age curses.
I guess I didn't even think about that. That's wow. Actually, that is a fantastic spin on that. Actually, I just did because I looked at it, I was like, I need to get out of my house, and I'm like, oh, I can get to Old at 10 o'clock in the morning at cheap. I can get to Jungle Cruise right after it for cheap. All right, perfect. Let's do this.
Yeah, this will be one of those movies I'll watch when it ends up on Disney Plus without the $30 premiere access. Clay, have you done that $30 premiere access on anything yet?
Have not done it on Disney. When let's see, what did have I did I feel like a couple of times. Yes, I did it, and this was with my roommate, so we kind of split it. But we did it for Barb and Star.
Mm-hmm.
Did the whatever I think it was maybe $20.
Like the premiere at home kind of.
The like theater at home.
Mm-hmm.
And then with my roommate's girlfriend really wanted to watch Wild Mountain Time, so we got drunk and watched Wild Mountain Time for $20 as well. And that was a special experience.
Mm-hmm. The $20 I can justify. It's the $30 with the Disney Plus. It's like, come on, you guys you're already getting around $10 a month from you.
If that $30 meant that it was attached to my Movies Anywhere to when the movie became available for purchase and it gave me the movie, I would drop that $30 in a heartbeat.
That's certainly a more reasonable.
Yeah. Like if I cancel my subscription, or when it becomes available for quote unquote free and whatnot, why am I spending $30 for that? Like, give me an incentive to spend $30 for it.
They've been doing pretty well, though. Again, a movie we'll talk about in just a minute is Black Widow. That one did frickin' really well on that Disney Plus Premiere Access. But
and are they adding? If you guys have been watching the box office numbers, like I said, I really haven't been. Are they adding those $30 fees to the box office, or are they presenting those as different numbers?
They are separate numbers.
Yep, separate numbers. Because like when Black Widow came out, it was
I believe 30 million on Disney Plus.
30 million on Disney Plus, weekend, like what? Freaking 60.
I think it's 60 at the box office. Yeah. So $90 million
Interesting.
altogether. Yeah.
Interesting. And then just, if things are going to be that way going forward, it's going to change what the box office even means. I mean, we don't care how much money is being added to a fucking company's bottom line. Like box office, we follow because it's an indication of how popular a movie is and how many people are seeing it. So if it's totally going to be bifurcated like that, tracking the box office is going to become it's going to mean something entirely different.
Well, even since these numbers aren't always coming out for every movie either, like HBO Max isn't always releasing their numbers for how many viewers it's getting, or Disney was very secretive with like Mulan last year of how much did that actually make with that $30 premiere access.
And by all accounts, Netflix is just wholesale making things up.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I want to say Black Widow was the first one where they've actually gone on record saying this is how much money they pulled. And part of that is attributed to the fact that, all of a sudden they had this whole lawsuit thing with ScarJo. But otherwise, Raya and the Last Dragon, Mulan, there was another one that did the 30. Oh, Cruella. They didn't release any sort of numbers for what was the $30 money or $30 viewing that they pulled in for those. I think the only reason why they even released for Black Widow and going forward was simply because of the whole ScarJo going, I'm gonna sue you guys. So I think that they were just trying to be like figure out how a way to be able to skirt that whole deal.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how those like the lawsuits pay off and what that means going forward for especially actors and what their payoff's going to be for these movies that are heading to streaming or doing the dual release, seeing how that's going to be integrated into their contracts obviously after this.
They're
going forward.
The percentages are going to change. That is for sure.
I mean, it used to be, Hollywood studios have been playing tricks to not pay people since the beginning of time. That's just that's what they do. But it used to be such a cleaner, more simpler thing with contracts, and now it is with the way things change every 6 years, drastically. Studios just try to as it seems like out of just a sense of principle because they're supposed to try and screw people over, but they try so hard to not to adhere to old contract structures that don't have anything to do with the current reality and just not pay people. And people like, the big, it's easy to dismiss the super famous people like Scarlett Johansson or whatever. Be like, you're super rich, et cetera, et cetera. But it is definitely, it's always been the most powerful people in those guilds making the noise and getting the changes made that helps all of the many, many, many more little people in those guilds. So,
and that's just it. They're complaining like, oh, you're complaining about your $20 million payday. Yeah, sure. But at the same time, too, if you've written a contract, you sign said contract, the other person signs said contract, and they're breaching it in some sort of shape or form or whatnot and claiming, well, that wasn't part of the quote unquote contract. Well, if it wasn't presented to you, how are you supposed to, work that? Absolutely. They're just finding a way to be able to be like, you know what? Well, it wasn't part of what we talked about.
Yeah. And it'll ScarJo's going to win, and it'll hopefully be a positive thing for actors and everybody else putting together streaming deals or, adjusting to contract language that leaves open, possibilities for how frequently things are changing constantly.
Oh, and one of the other things I came across here recently too was that if Bob Iger was still in the seat, this probably would never have happened because he's the kind of person who would have been like, let's fix this now before it becomes too much, before it becomes a problem. And it's only because of who is currently CEO that's like, oh, it's all about, like you said, it's about the bottom dollar. It's about what's it going to do for me, not what's it going to do for the rest of my talent.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing I find so fascinating with looking at the box office every week. And now this Scarlett Johansson thing is kind of throwing a wrinkle into it too. Is 5 years from now, what's it going to look like when we look at like how contracts look with how box office payouts are going to happen? What is the box office going to mean in 5 years? What are those numbers actually going to present themselves as? I think that's something fascinating that we can keep looking at, going forward and continue to do so here. But number 3, though, M. Night Shyamalan's old, $4.14 million. This movie's doing really well for itself here. What, third weekend out for Old? Doing very well for itself. I'm sure obviously very low budget, as M. Night has been doing as of late, and doing pretty well for itself at the box office.
I think that one of the reasons why this is actually doing halfway decent right now is because we're coming off of a good wave of M. Night movie, as opposed to like coming off of like The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
Like if we would have been coming off of like that part of the M. Night universe, this would have been already out of the box office by now. Nobody would have been like, I'm not going to go see that. But because the Split and Glass, I think, is what's helped him along with this movie.
And people are just, and again, this is all stuff we'll talk about in our discussion of science, but people, M. Night Shyamalan is a brand. Like it is incredible how, more so than maybe any, I mean, obviously there are directors who are bigger names. There's Spielberg's and Scorsese's and stuff, Wes Anderson's, people who have auteur brands, but M. Night Shyamalan is just, people love when he makes an M. Night Shyamalan movie. Nobody loves the way he moves the camera. Nobody cares about Last Airbender or After Earth, but when he comes out and is like, hey guys, here's a crazy M. Night Shyamalan movie, it's gonna have a twist, people are like, oh yes, M. Night's back. This is what we love. And he's the only one who is making, at least on a wide release studio level, these just unabashed, he's like, I'm going to make it. You said this like mid-budget, weird horror comedy and it's going to have a twist. And people love it. People have been talking about, I mean, it's been memed to death on the internet, and everybody keeps talking about The Beach That Makes You Old, and it's these clean elevator pitch premises that he comes up with that people love. They can't get enough. And the relationship with M. Night has continued to evolve, where people love, and I don't think anyone hates M. Night Shyamalan just because he seems like a super like chill, nice family man. But people love him, and then also love him ironically, and it just comes around to everyone loving him. And people want to talk. People want to be part of the conversation about the movie that makes you old. It's killing me that I've not seen Old yet. I want to be able to talk about it with people. So I get it. I will be prioritizing going out to the theater to see Old.
Yeah, I watched it over this last week, and I just had a freaking cheeky ass grin on my face this entire time. Like, this is exactly why I go to the theater to watch an M. Night Shyamalan movie. This is ridiculous, bonkers, crazy fun, and that's exactly what this movie is. And I was laughing along with or against the movie. I don't know, and I think that's kind of the charm of an M. Night movie. You don't know if you're laughing with him or you're laughing at him, and not necessarily at him, the person, but at the film itself. But Old is just, it's that perfect M. Night Shyamalan formula. It just falls right in line with that. And I think, again, like you were saying, Clay, he's a brand. He's what people want to go out to see. And it's no longer, I'm going to laugh at his name popping up on a trailer. It's more of, I'm laughing along with whatever weird ass premise he's going to come up with, like The Visit or doing Split, or even Glass was like, all right, here's old M. Night really coming back with actually doing a full-on sequel to one of his more beloved films. And now he's like, all right, I did that. Finished off that trilogy I was doing with Unbreakable. Now I'm just doing weird ass concepts like The Village and Lady in the Water and The Happening again. I'm just doing old people on a beach. You get old really fast. That's the concept.
He's just doing the movies he wants to make, and that is the fun thing about M. Night Shyamalan is he became such a name so quickly. I mean, his first two movies were tiny and under the radar, and then The Sixth Sense. From there on out, his name on the poster is all you need to sell the movie, which is so, and on a national level. Like, I don't know, maybe besides Spielberg, and maybe this is why early in his career, people were, magazines were declaring him the next Spielberg, maybe less in terms of his particular, the way he makes movies, and more the fact that he became so famous so young. But, by his fourth movie, and really his second movie that anyone saw, he was the selling point. His name was the selling point, which is absolutely incredible. And people love those early movies. Maybe, Lady in the Water notwithstanding, people love those early movies, as you were saying, Brian. And people are delighted that he's going back to making just those old weird M. Night Shyamalan movies exactly the way he wants to make them. He has had the latitude given to him by The Sixth Sense to and this is why M. Night was perfect for the Blank Check podcast when they did that years ago. He has had that blank check his entire career. He gets to make whatever weird thing he wants to make. No one is telling him this part is too silly. No one is telling him like you shouldn't play like the fourth lead in Lady in the Water. Like nobody is telling him no. And there's something very, very charming and personal about someone getting to put these totally pure expressions out into the world, and it makes him endearing. And it also helps that he just is kind of just seems like a low key, goofy dad. I think that as that has in the last couple of years, I think that has really endeared him to people as well.
Number 4, then we're going completely different than old. We're going to something into the Marvel universe. Black Widow, $4 million here for the film. Black Widow, again, still doing pretty well. Not as a big a drop as it had those first 2 weeks that it was in the box office, but it'll hang around for a while, obviously, with the Marvel movie, but that'll drop off here. Shang-Chi comes out here, and is it this month, August?
Oh, shit.
Oh, man. I've been seeing the trailers a lot, so it must be coming up sometime soon.
One of 7 movies they have coming out this year from the Marvel Universe.
They don't have that.
Okay,
man.
like 3 more.
September 3rd.
September 3rd. Oh, that's coming up quick. Black Widow. Look, just the second, pure personal expression in a row. No studio interference. Just the movie they wanted to make. No, Black Widow I thought was really boring. I like the MCU movies. I thought the first scene of Black Widow kind of kicked ass really hard. I loved that flashback to the 90s scene. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of the movie, ScarJo seems bored. It's just scene after scene of people saying, "We were family." No, we weren't. And the movie totally is stolen by obviously Florence Pugh and I like David Harbour a lot as well. Mm-hmm. And then it builds to a third act with a villain where you're like, what? It's just the big third act is just Ray Winstone in glasses, like stomping around in his like office and ranting, and then gets killed. Like it was one of the most pathetic, villain/villain schemes I think in any MCU movie. It just did nothing for me.
I still stand. I agree with the fact that this was a movie that was done too late. It should have been released at the time that it takes place.
Yeah.
But I am also torn because I agree with you that, though it may feel that ScarJo's performance is a little phoned in at this point, she's been doing this for a decade. If this had come out 4 years ago, we wouldn't have the Florence Pugh, we wouldn't have the David Harbour, which were 2 of the biggest shining stars of this movie. Like I'm excited to see Hawkeye just to see more Florence Pugh in the MCU.
Sure.
Yeah. So, that's where it's like I'm torn. Like I agree. Like again, too late, but it feels to me almost like it's the passing of the torch at this point.
That's where I felt this maybe would have worked better as a Disney Plus series, doing a Black Widow story set at the end of Civil War between Infinity War, and maybe we could have fleshed out Florence Pugh and David Harbour more for their eventual spin-offs into the MCU somewhere. Because for me, like this felt like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier you probably could have done a movie of that too and done the same thing you wanted to do in that series. But it worked better as a series. This is where I felt like Black Widow could have probably fell in. And that's where I'm interested to see what like Shang-Chi and the Eternals do going forward as movies instead of series of maybe maybe some of these Marvel movies need to earn that title of being a movie instead of the series, because we've seen their series do so well on Disney Plus. And for many people, Loki is one of those examples of that's one of the best things the MCU has done. And it's in a series format, so we might be seeing some more of that coming from that Disney Plus pipeline. I think we're going to see a lot less of the big characters kind of getting solo movies and more of maybe these team up Disney Plus series going forward for the MCU.
Quite possibly. I don't really like the flattening out of the definition between TV series and movie with the MCU. That was another thing that kind of bothered me about Black Widow. I was watching it in the theater and I was like, this kind of feels like I'm watching a TV show in a theater. And there was nothing about the production. There was nothing about the performances. And now there's not really even anything about the movie stars that make it feel like a movie, because the movie stars are doing the TV shows. That, and then the tag or the end credits scene is probably the worst in the entire series. It's so flat. The scene is nothing. Julia Louis-Dreyfus shows up. I was just talking about this on the Patreon for ScreenDrafts, and it's like, man, I don't know. Julia Louis-Dreyfus just didn't feel like she should have been on the big screen in the movie theater at the end of the MCU movie. That was just full on, Elaine vibes for me. I was like, this is TV. What is Julia Louis-Dreyfus doing here? And I like her on Veep. And I like her in the Nicole Holofcener movie. Enough said. But I don't know, like introducing her in, what was she? Oh, she was in Winter Soldier, and then Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then bringing her into this movie. I'm just like, I don't know. It's making it's kind of cheapening everything to me. Just making it there be no barrier between the TV stuff and the movie stuff.
But we also wonder and question, was that scene something that was an afterthought after she was included in Falcon and Winter Soldier, or would she have been showing up first last year had the movie come out when it was supposed to?
From everything I've heard, it's she was supposed to appear in Black Widow first, and then the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like that was supposed to be her first appearance. Was that after credit scene? I think it actually works better that they swapped the two. We at least know who the hell the character is now from seeing her in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Whereas this, it would have been like, why the hell is what's going? Why is she in this movie? Who is she? What is she?
like you said, why is Elaine with purple hair in the MCU?
Why is she here? Yeah. But that's where I think maybe they need to take, in a way, a little bit of the Star Wars formula of maybe some of these smaller things need to stay on TV, like The Mandalorian was, and then you have your
change very soon.
Epic stuff.
We're getting an Obi-Wan show with all the movie people, like that.
That's true.
Star Wars is doing the exact same thing.
That's true. That is true. Let's go on to number 5 then. Stillwater, the Matt Damon film, $2.86 million. That's just kind of creeping into the box office the last couple of weeks. Not a whole lot of promotion that I've been seeing about this movie besides, hey, look, it's Matt Damon as a Southerner. That's about it.
I feel we're kind of in that part in Matt Damon's career right now where he really doesn't have the foothold of going, oh, I need to go see a Matt Damon movie. He had a little bit of that when, especially with the Bourne movies and whatnot. But like, this is the one out of all these that I haven't seen yet. And it's not, I'm like, from what I hear, it's a good movie, but it's not like I'm going, I need to go see the new Matt Damon movie. Like you said with M. Night, it's a brand, whatever the case is. There are a lot of actors that are like, I don't care what the movie is. If it's got this actor in it, I'm going to go see this movie. And this one, I'm like, I could probably wait either for a matinee or wait until it comes home.
Yeah, I mean, there really aren't that many actors anymore. Obviously, the whole thing with movie stardom and being able to hang an entire movie on the back of one person, that, along with everything else in the movie business, that whole structure has kind of been changing the last 10 or 15 years, the demise of the movie star. But Matt Damon, yeah, I mean, outside of the franchises, was he ever that kind of actor? Was there ever a period where people were like, oh, Matt Damon, sign me up? Like, he's always good. I like Matt Damon a lot, and I'm always glad when he's in a movie. I've got a gigantic, right above my camera here, I've got Matt Damon, a 5-foot, I've got this huge, talented Mr. Ripley set photo mounted thing above my desk. So I've got Matt Damon looking at me all the damn time. I'm a big Matt Damon fan. But yeah, I mean, it was more like he's a great Bourne. There's another Bourne movie. He's really fun in the Oceans movies. There's another Oceans movie. Like, he was never Will Smith. He was never, there's a new Will Smith joint. It's gonna, open number 1 on July 4th or whatever.
I would say maybe like the closest one he's had, at least of recent years, I had to pull it up just to get an idea, honestly, was The Martian.
Yeah, The Martian did really well, but people also loved that book, and it had great word of mouth. Did that open really big, The Martian? I don't know if we know that offhand.
That's and again, that's Ridley Scott with him. You know, that's a team up. You know, and I think that's a lot of things with Matt Damon
well-marketed movie.
As of late, him with whoever is directing him in the movie, it's the combo of getting people to see a Matt Damon movie. I think he's always had that movie star quality, but not necessarily the big box office like a Will Smith, Tom Cruise type. Like
or even Brad Pitt, who's a little bit more of a contemporary.
Martian opened at 54.3.
That's solid. Well done, The Martian. That's a good that's a good flick. I'm curious about Stillwater. I don't know. It's the kind of thing where if I had less going on, I would like hit like an afternoon show or something, because I like to see anything in the movie theater, and I have A-list, and I go all the time. I'll see whatever. But also Todd McCarthy is such a weird. He's got one of the strangest careers as a director. But when he's capable of making really, really interesting movies. I love Win-Win. Spotlight was great. So I'm curious about Stillwater, especially because the trailer makes it look kind of dopey, but I've seen a few people I respect, some critics online, saying that it's actually like kind of great and has a real like 90s thriller feel, that's a strong selling point for me.
It's got to have that 90s strong feeling. He's got the 90s goatee going on.
I've heard nothing but great things about this movie, but it's one of those movies. It's like it'll pop up, on some streaming service in a few months. Then I'll hit play. Like that's what it has. Kind of has that same vibe of what was that Kevin Costner movie that came out? Was it last year? Let him go.
Let him go.
Yeah, like that had that.
Just hit HBO Max recently.
That had that same trailer vibe for me for this movie, and then I heard it's freaking fantastic.
Right. I forgot to watch that. I got to put that on my watch list. Let him go. That looked kind of good.
Right.
And I've heard nothing but great things about that one too. But it's like the trailer was like, this looks a little cheesy. But again, those are maybe where some of these movies will just land. They'll land on that streaming service, and all of a sudden, 2 years later, it's like, why the hell didn't we watch this in the theater and make a shit ton of money for this movie?
I mean, again, the answer for a lot of these still right now is going to be unprecedented world factors.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So that's the box office again. Number 1, Suicide Squad. 2, Jungle Cruise. Number 3, Old. Number 5, Black Widow. Number 4, Black Widow. Number 5, Stillwater. Brian, let's get into the news. Only one little piece of news that we do have to talk about here.
I know. I even was going on just trying to scour like Reddit and stuff like that. I'm like, is there anything other than this? Like, there really wasn't, other than maybe a couple of trailers. But
do we need anything else but this?
Of course, you're like, I'm all in. Paramount Plus inks a deal with Trey Parker, Matt Stone for 14 South Park films, and it's renewed through season 30 because we need 30 years of South Park.
I need another 30 more after these 30 years.
I will say this, I enjoy South Park when I watch it. It's not something there where I've seen every episode or anything like that. I've never even seen Bigger, Longer, Uncut, but
oh wow,
you've never seen Bigger, Longer, and Uncut?
I have not. But I would say this: if I was Trey Parker and Matt Stone and this proposal was presented to me, why would I say no? Especially because we know that they are going to get the creative freedom that they have always had, because that's why Paramount's going after them in the first place. That of course they're going to be like, oh, you want 14 films? Well, we can pump that out in a week. You want more seasons? We will pump that out. Not a problem with it. And so, I'm all for this. I mean, if it's more content for Paramount Plus to help their streaming service and they can afford to pay them for it, let them sign the check over.
Yeah, I mean, they've been working, as you said, Casey, they've been working at this rate for the last, I don't know, when did this damn show start? This show started when I was in like 5th grade. Like
late 90s, 97. Yeah.
Oh my God. The movie was over 20 years ago. This seems like such a blockbuster deal just because there's a ton of money involved, but I'm sure for them, they're like, you want to just keep doing a ton of South Park all the time and we'll put it on Paramount Plus? And they're like, yeah, tell you whatever, I don't give a shit. Like it.
Right. That's probably literally their response. Their physical response. We're like, fuck it. All right.
All right. Sure. Movies. All right. So we'll make up like a bunch of 2-hour episodes. Oh, whatever. Who cares? Like, I don't. What is movies? He's like, they announced this. They're like 14 movies and the show. I'm like, what do you like? What are the movies? They're just going to be like, they used to do. I have not watched South Park in, I don't know, 10 years. But when I was watching it in college, they would do these like 3-episode kind of like trilogy arcs that played like movies. I even think they put some of them out on DVD as well. There was, what was it called? Imagination
Land. Yeah.
Imagination Land. I think that was when I was in college. I remember that pretty well. Yeah. They put that out on DVD as a quote unquote movie. So like, there's just going to be a bunch of those. And then they also did they specify how many episodes per season? Because South Park's also a thing where they'll be like, this season has 6 episodes. And then this season has 17. It's just kind of like however many they feel like making at any given time. So the more interesting South Park news to me is that Trey Parker and Matt Stone are trying to buy Casa Bonita, the restaurant. Which rocks, and I could not be more pleased about. I have been to Casa Bonita twice when I've gone through Denver, and I love kitsch and I love artifice. Like I love going to I'm going to Disneyland next week. I love that shit, and it is just an absolute delight going to Casa Bonita. And I did a road trip about a month ago, coming back from Minnesota to LA with my sister, and I was like, we have to detour. We were trying to do it as fast as possible, but I convinced her, I was like, we have to go to Casa Bonita. And we detoured to Casa Bonita, and it's not open yet for food, which is fine because the food is absolutely unpotable. But they were doing tours, but the next tour was anyway, we didn't go to Casa Bonita. So I'm so happy that Trey Parker and Matt Stone are gonna keep it alive, and it sounds like they just want to return it to its former glory and make the food good. So that is they are good in my book right now for that.
That's where all that Paramount money is going to is back into Casa Bonita.
Casa Bonita is going to get $150 million makeover.
Even with what was this deal at? It was like 900 million or something like. Some crazy number, and this is after I think it was last year they signed an HBO Max deal of having every South Park season on that, so they were making money off that already. So I mean, this is my final nail in the coffin of, all right, I need to sign up for Paramount Plus, I guess, because I need to watch these 14 South Park movies, because in our house we watch South Park almost every single day. Like that's our go-to of, all right, it's the end of the day, let's put on 2 episodes of South Park and just shut our mind off again. And we're finishing up the entire series for a second time in the last 2 years. So this is great news for me. I love South Park. This is absolutely what I want to keep hearing from them, doing through season 30 and 14 movies. I'm assuming these 14 movies are probably going to be like they did that pandemic special a few months ago. That's what I'm assuming a movie is going to count as. Maybe something like an hour long, maybe even shorter. But yeah, their seasons have been max 10 episodes of the last couple years. So that's what I am assuming they're going to do going forward, of keeping it right around 10. But good on Trey Parker and Matt Stone for doing this for this long and making so much damn money off just these cardboard cutout characters that they made, in college. That's incredible that they've made this much money off it and held this much creative control. Like everything South Park related, from the video games to everything else, everything has to go through Trey and Matt to get that done. So that's quite impressive. They've been able to hold on to it this long, and props to them. And hopefully we can go to Casa Bonita one of these days and enjoy shitty Mexican food.
I can't wait going back to Casa Bonita. And if they make the food good, oh my goodness, that place is going to be packed 24/7.
So I pulled up because I was curious about when you're saying about what's this costing them, which they've been in bed with CBS and Viacom for, obviously, like you said, I mean, Comedy Central, they've been in there for decades. It is $900 million over the course of 6 years. And it says the deal calls for Viacom CBS to advance Parker and Stone $150 million a year to cover their fees for the upcoming production, as well as the ongoing profit participation from stakes in the franchise.
So that covers production. That covers their whole operation and the production of the episodes and everything. Yeah. There you go. Get that cash, Matt and Trey. Right. Thinking about South Park, and then also thinking about It's Always Sunny, just seeming to they're just going to exist until the sun, eats the earth. It's like, that's incredible. That's incredible. This thing that these people made for zero money and passed around a VHS tape, however many decades ago, still going strong. And I have fallen off of South Park, but I do still check back in with Always Sunny from time to time. And it's not as consistent as it used to be, but these guys, they're still talented. They can still come up with some great stuff. So more power to them.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's get into this week's main topic. Then again, people keeping the power of something that they create, something that's only could come from their mind. This is M. Night Shyamalan, who is kind of like the movie version of the South Park and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia universe,
Still
making
going.
whatever the hell he wants and is still doing it. But yeah, we're talking about 2002's Signs, kind of one of the big ones in the early M. Night Shyamalan renaissance. And Clay, we asked you to come on, and the movie you said you'd like to do is Signs. What's your history with this movie? What's your history with Signs and M. Night Shyamalan as a whole?
Well, look, I was down to talk about any M. Night Shyamalan movie because, as we've already established, his movies are fun to, even when they're bad, they are very fun to talk about. His movies are never boring, which is that is the absolute worst thing a movie can be, is boring. If it's gonna be not work, it better not work spectacularly, which is always how M. Night does it. My history, but Signs is my favorite of his movies. And it's the only one that, even as much as I love M. Night, Signs is kind of the only one that I have revisited frequently throughout the years. But my history with it goes back to, I saw in theaters. It was the first horror movie that I saw in theaters. I was a big scaredy cat as a kid, and I didn't really get into horror until my early 20s. So it was a big deal to go see this movie. I saw it with my friends. I wasn't with my parents. I was I think I was had just turned 14, I believe. And I had pretty strict parents in terms of movies and things. So it was still pretty early into being able to see PG-13 movies at all in the movie theater. And I went with my friends to see Signs. And it scared the shit out of me. In the movie theater as a kid, no parents around, it really scared. And it, from the very beginning, opening with that really aggressive James Newton Howard score, that the kind of psycho-esque score that's right in your face. It really sets the mood right away. And it kind of brilliantly, skipping ahead to talking about the actual movie, because then it kind of downshifts into sort of a slow build. I think it's really smart to open the movie with that really unnerving opening credits sequence, or else the audience, I think, might, I don't know, the energy might not be right for that build back up into the scary stuff. I think if putting you on edge right away creates this expectation of like, okay, when is it going to get scary again? I think it kind of propels you through the sort of exposition-y parts at the beginning, even though I think it's a really effectively kind of moody, kind of sad, slow build at the beginning. This is just a great movie. But anyway, it scared the shit out of me when I saw it. I remember being very excited for it, even though I had not seen The Sixth Sense, because, like I said, M. Night Shyamalan his name became an event marker instantaneously. So they marketed the hell out of this movie. I remember there were posters, those like early teaser posters that kind of, it was some sort of like a number countdown. It was like the different signs or something. And then it just said like M. Night Shyamalan Signs, like next summer. Like, I think they were promoting this thing while they were shooting it. And I just remember being really, really excited for it for some reason. Maybe I was a big Mel Gibson fan for some reason. I don't think so. I don't think there's anything he would have been in that I would have been a huge fan of at that time yet.
I need it for the Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, I was like, oh man. I love oh shoot, I was gonna have, if I'd remembered the name of this movie, that would have been a great joke. Meet the Abbotts, or Inventing the Abbotts. Shit. Let's pretend that I remembered the title of Inventing the Abbotts at the beginning, and then that's why I wanted to see Joaquin Phoenix. Yeah, so I loved this movie the first time I saw it. You know, I've owned it on various home video formats. I go back to it every couple of years. It's just, I watched it last night, and I was like, okay, I'll watch this, to refresh. Maybe, if I feel like it, I'll look at Twitter or something because I know this movie intimately, so I'm just gonna do kind of a brush up. And I fucking sat there enthralled the entire time, and I was very. I had a long day yesterday. I was very tired, but I was crying at the end. I was like, yeah, I had a whole experience with this movie last night, and it kind of I almost maybe like it even more than I did before. So I'm very excited to talk about it. I really do love this movie, and I always have, and I still think it's his. I think it's his best. I think it's his best movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll piggyback right off that. This is my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie. I've seen it a couple times before this, but watching it again this time, like, this movie's just so damn good. Like, it has those quirks of an M. Night Shyamalan movie, but it's also a little restrained in those, and those kind of add to the charm and kind of the weird, strange aspects that are in Signs. And the first time I watched it or remember Signs at all, because I was very young when this came out, was obviously. I was like, it was 2002. I was eight years old when this came out, but I remember it on TV all the time and just seeing, the cornfield and then the signs in the cornfield. Obviously, being from Iowa, I'm like, that's all that's around me is cornfields like this. This is terrifying. That's why as a kid it was like Children of the Corn, and this is like. That haunts every Iowan out there. Like of this is the scariest thing ever, because that's all we know. That's all that's around us is corn. So imagine aliens or creepy little kids coming out of it. It's like, or either one is scary.
Casey, you're forgetting though maybe the most important Iowa cornfield movie.
Oh, he never forgets that movie.
Oh, I never forget. It's just not scary that baseball players come out of a cornfield.
I mean, it's kind of scary. It's ghost baseball players like that. It's always shocked me how fucking chill he is when the old timey baseball players emerge from his cornfield. But yes, oh man, I love a cornfield too. Cornfields are scary as hell. I grew up in the cities. I like I said, I'm from Minneapolis, but I grew up in the suburbs. But going out to all of my family was in rural western Minnesota, and a lot of cornfields. I've gotten lost in a cornfield a couple of times, and that is a uniquely stressful experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially as I say, and my grandpa grew, had corn in the fields, and it's like you get there and late in the season and whatnot, and you're like, I'm just gonna go, and then you lose sight. And no, I think that's one thing about this movie too, especially if you're somebody who's from the Midwest. I think you have a different appreciation for this movie than you do if you're somebody who basically grew up in the concrete jungles of like LA or something like that, where you don't know that Midwest feel, you don't know that. That feeling of, like you said, getting lost in the cornfield, or, your kid gets lost in the cornfield and your dad has to go try to find them kind of thing. So,
or even like the isolation aspect of this farmhouse is really in the middle of nowhere. We're pretty much isolated to it that entire time, except for when they go into town very early on in the movie. But everything else is in this townhouse out in the middle of a cornfield. They're by themselves. There's no one else out there to help them. Like that's a scary thing, especially in the Midwest, because that's the norm out here. That's what's normal out here. It's not that you're in this big city of like something like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where it's like in this big city and this is all happening. No, you're in the middle of cornfield, and whatever news you get, it's from the radio or the TV. And I think M. Night really showcases that type of paranoia in this movie. Effective, extremely effective in this movie, of showing that paranoia of being so isolated where your only news is coming from radio and TV, especially in the last year of what's been going on actually in the real world. That's a scary thing to be. That's the only news that you have. That's the only way you get your news. You're not getting it from anyone else in town. It's what's happening on the TV.
It's that's why I wish it kind of did was, given taking a place in the Midwest, someplace where, the cornfields and everything like that are very synonymous, like, Field Dreams, stuff like that, but, because the only time did they ever really mention it, they mentioned once that it's in Pennsylvania. And I would, to me, it doesn't feel like Pennsylvania, maybe, I guess I didn't realize there was cornfields in Pennsylvania, but maybe that's just because I've grown up literally in, the Midwest with a bunch of corn. But I almost feel like this feels more Midwest than it feels more of like the Eastern Seaboard.
From what I understand, Pennsylvania, I mean, that's like, excuse me, that's like big Amish country and stuff like that. Pennsylvania, I get this from good old Ryan Marker, who grew up in Philadelphia, but it is on kind of the eastern part of the state is a lot more East Coasty, and it really the state as you go west, you get through like Pittsburgh and stuff. It's very kind of Iron Range steelworker feeling, and then by you get to the western part of the state, it's all agriculture and Trump country. So it's but hey, it's M. Night. It doesn't matter what the movie is. It's gotta be set in Pennsylvania, or I believe Old at least has some of the characters are from Pennsylvania or something. But that guy, I respect the loyalty to the home state from old M. Night Shyamalan.
I'll give him that. I guess I didn't realize he was from Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
well, look, that's what I'm just assuming that because like so many of his movies take place in Pennsylvania.
I think he is from Philadelphia. I think he's from Philadelphia.
Okay,
pretty sure he is. Yeah, but this movie, I think this is also shot in Pennsylvania too. That they shot this movie out there as well. That was outside. It might actually be shot where it's actually set in this movie, which is
Bucks
a
County
rarity.
or whatever. Yeah.
But yeah, I think I do love that M. Night always throws that into pretty much every one of his movies of having that hometown connection to it. And this movie here is one of those movies where I was kind of talking with someone else about Signs, and who could have maybe in the talks of the Mel Gibson type of role in this movie. And I was like, Mel Gibson is so great in this movie, taking out everything we know about Mel Gibson as the actual person, because he's not a good guy in real life. But in this movie, he is fantastic in this movie of playing this kind of subtlety. He does feel like everyone's dad in this movie, which is kind of a very hard role to pull off if you're not already ingrained in that feeling, like Kevin Costner or Tom Hanks have always kind of had that feeling of that's America's dad between the two of those two. Yep. But Mel Gibson really pulls that off very well, and that's something I'd never really thought of before with any Mel Gibson role of, he does have that perfect dad type. Do you guys feel that same way with Mel in this movie of like, this is really kind of the solid Midwest dad who's just going through the struggles of being a single parent and going through a huge tragedy that has happened to him and his family?
I think part of that lies in the character himself. And that because of being an ex-priest or pastor or whatever, that he, it's a small town, so it's the typical. Everybody goes to church. Everybody sees him as a father figure, as a mentor, as that kind of person. So I think the character kind of helps extend his ability to get that father figure feeling, throughout this movie. Everybody looks up to and respects him regardless of the tragedy and whatnot, even to the point where he's like, I'm not that person anymore. Stop calling me that. But, everybody's still like, well, just because you're my dad, you don't want me to call you dad. I'm still going to call you dad. So I think I definitely think it's a matter of his embodiment of that character.
Well, absolutely. I think it's I think it's a well-written character. I think actually all the characters in this are amongst M. Night Shyamalan's best written. But it's that really simple core storytelling stuff where you weave into your main character their arc and their insecurities is what matches up perfectly with the grander story that you're telling. And he's a guy who ostensibly had all of the answers. As a reverend or whatever, he was speaking on behalf of God, and people went to him, as you're saying, Brian, for guidance and comfort. And now that he has lost his faith, everybody still goes to him for that, and that just makes him more insecure. But he's got these responsibilities, especially to his children, to try and maintain that sense of security and that he knows what he's doing. So it's an incredibly nuanced part to play, and I think Mel Gibson he's phenomenal in this movie, and I think he's a great choice for it because because I think a big movie star playing lower key is exactly who you need for this movie, not just to sell it, but because it's Mel Gibson who is has this stature, has this untouchability, plays a lot of these really confident characters. And then putting him in this part, kind of playing this smaller role, it mimics that sort of celebrity and power that you have in a small town as the leader of the church, and then stripping that away and getting underneath that. I think that sort of real life vibe being mirrored in the movie is really interesting and really, really works. And also Mel Gibson, and he's, he didn't just play Riggs his whole career. He has had a few interesting dramatic roles, but he's got this weariness, this natural weariness in his eyes. He's got a very expressive face, and there's a lot of great close-up work in this movie that he doesn't really have to do much, and you get so much out of it in terms of emoting. He's just great. And yeah, as you were saying, Casey, he's got these stubby hands and hairy knuckles, and he's got this slightly receding hairline with like kind of the curly. You put that guy in a button up. What's the kind of shirt that,
like a flannel shirt and blue jeans, and
you throw a flannel and blue jeans on this guy, and he can definitely play that middle America dad type, and he does it so well here. But the whole family is so well cast. The chemistry with this family is just spectacular.
And I think that one thing that really benefits this movie is that Mel Gibson and Joaquin as well are these really strange actors that do take on. They take a lot of risks in pretty much every role that they have. And I think something in an M. Night movie, you need those types of actors to work with his dialogue, because his dialogue is so strange and unworldly. Like no one in real life talks like M. Night characters. Right. That's why you need actors who are on the little bit of the edge of, these guys are a little strange, but I love watching them on the screen. That's why it works so well in an M. Night movie, because they are on the edge of, they're really weird, but also this dialogue is very weird and strange, and no one actually talks like this at all.
And it plays better in this movie than in some other movies because of the isolation, because it is mostly this one family, and then a couple other people in this small town. You could almost believe that just the people who live in this town are all a little weird. And particularly the main family could just be a little weird. Maybe these people are just like this. And they're all, still coming out of this extreme tragedy. So maybe they're all a little mentally, emotionally, psychologically kind of on edge in this weird place together in their isolated farmhouse. I was watching it this time, and I will say, it's more for it. I think that the weird dialogue plays maybe best in this movie of any of his movies. I haven't watched The Sixth Sense in a long time. I don't know if maybe that one's a little less weird. People don't usually seem to bring up his stilted dialogue when they're talking about The Sixth Sense, but I think it plays really well in this movie, better than some others. I think this script is just a little bit better. I think it's a little bit less weird. I think the jokes, for the most part, kind of work in this movie, and M. Night's constant, right in the edge in terms of tone, I think is calibrated pretty well in this movie. At times it played, I was like, this almost feels like a European movie translated into, this feels like a Michael Haneke movie sometimes, in the way that the characters are being a little unnatural, but or scenes are playing, the way M. Night directs it, the space he gives things. Particularly the scene, and putting in these like slightly heightened things happening, like when they're checking out the cornfield with Cherry Jones, who's great in this movie. They're looking at the cornfield, and simultaneously the dog is like freaking out at the little kids, and then they hear the scream and they run out, and just the dog's got the steak knife or the steak skewer sticking out of its neck, and the kids are in, one is kind of in the mid background and one's back in the tree in the playhouse, like that kind of thing. I was like, oh, this has a real odd European sensibility to it. So I was enjoying it on that level this last time as well. I was like, oh, this is like Funny Games or something.
The scene that really does that for me, of like that weirdness of like, this doesn't seem like, no other filmmaker really does this, is the scene where the police officer, she shows up at the house and is talking to Joaquin and Mel Gibson about what they saw outside the house, what they were chasing in that weird scene too. But the fact she's like, yeah, but I've seen people in the Olympics, they can jump that high, they can run that fast. And it's like, Who says that? Who in
Well,
real
that's the
life?
thing.
What
That's the
officer
thing.
says that?
It is all a setup to. I guarantee you, M. Night Shyamalan thought of Joaquin Phoenix's line where he says, excluding the possibility that a female Olympian was running around on our roof last night, what are some other possibilities? Which is a very funny line, but then you have to set that up somehow. So then you have Cherry Jones just being like, and it's unnatural and it's weird, but it's all built to get to that joke.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, maybe I'm just a sucker because maybe it's just nostalgia because I've loved this movie since I was a kid. But it works for me. This is a strange town with strange people. And it is really, I think it is like I said, I think it is the most successful comedy that he has done. When I saw this the first time, I remember being struck by how both scary and funny it was simultaneously. I like particularly Joaquin Phoenix he has the exact right performance for this movie in terms of, you've got Brian in your background, you've got the scene where it's a tremendous piece of visual comedy where Mel Gibson comes home and suddenly Joaquin Phoenix is also wearing the tinfoil hat. And M. Night's got a sense for comedy. That is a genuinely very, very funny cut. And there's a few of them like that in this movie. Joaquin is great. The scene where they run out to chase Lee Pritchard or Pritchard and the Wolvington brothers or whatever around the house. And they do the setup about the cursing, and Mel Gibson's, it's unnatural when I curse, and they run out, and he says, it's got to be an ass whooping. And they come back around, he says, I cursed, I heard. The way that's written, the way it's performed in this very offhand, natural way, like, the comedy lands in this movie. Like, it is his best script, I think.
I think part of that is the delivery, like we've said, is, you couldn't picture anybody else playing these two characters within this film. Almost to the point where, like, we talk about like the whole Olympian thing and whatnot, almost feels like, to me, that almost feels like it's a line where Joaquin is the type of person who went off script just because he's Joaquin. And, M. Night's like, you know what? I want to use that. So he adds the part before it, because, that sounds like something Joaquin would be like, what Olympians jumping on my roof kind of thing. But, the fact that, that they have such a great delivery of all of that. Because I agree, when they start running around the house and whatnot, I'm laughing at it just because it's so obnoxious, because you're picturing like how many priests in their life would be like, I can't curse, I can't do this and whatnot. And anybody, regardless of what's going on, is going to be running around their house pretending and, quote unquote, not cursing while cursing.
They sell it. They sell it. They take it 100% seriously. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix is about just as intense of a guy as Mel Gibson is, and they commit to this stuff 100%. They're not winking. They're going all in. The bit where Mel Gibson is talking to the alien like he's some kid that's trapped in the closet, and he's talking about the paddy wagon. Like, these are things that I think if you get, and we've seen it in other M. Night Shyamalan movies, if you get someone who is not taking it seriously and they're winking and they're trying to play it up, they ruin the comedy. And it's oftentimes not as well written. I think it goes back to, for whatever reason, maybe there was some on-set stuff, although I know that usually people are pretty word perfect with Shyamalan scripts. This one is just a notch above.
And I think this is one of those movies that he balances, like you said, Clay, the comedy with the scares and the drama, like maybe better than he ever has or ever will in this movie. Because you look at the interaction between Mel and Joaquin, like when they're about to go chase the brothers that they think are on the farmhouse. Now, funny that dialogue and banter is, and then you go to the scene of the two sitting on the couch together, and Mel Gibson really explaining why he doesn't believe anymore, why he's lost his faith. It's like that's a highly dramatic scene of like, I want to start crying during this, even though 20 minutes ago earlier in the film they're doing this weird quirky dialogue together. It's just this balance that M. Night and the actors find together in this movie, I think, really makes it stand above the rest of the M. Night Shyamalan filmography of like, this is top tier of what he could really do in terms of being quirky, but also having that real heart and real warmth to this movie as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that scene is probably my favorite scene in the movie, and it's just incredible. And there's this story that's perhaps apocryphal that they were shooting this part of the movie when 9/11 happened, and Mel Gibson had flown back, off of the set to be with his family, and he flew in back. I think his first day back, they canceled the shoot for a few weeks. And Mel Gibson flew back in, I think, just for the day to shoot this scene. And maybe they tell this story in the special features or something, and maybe I'm misremembering it. But the way I remember it is that he walked on set, did this scene once, like did his big monologue in his close up, and did it on take one, and everybody was just like amazed.
I was watching those special features, and Joaquin, it was like Joaquin went first and crushed it, and Mel's like, I know I need to do this, but I do need to leave. Like, I need to go back home and stuff. But he's like, all right, since Joaquin put in this work today, I'm doing it. And they did, like you said, one take. And I'm like, that's incredible. That just shows how great of actors they had in this, of just doing things on one take. And like you said, Clay, this movie was shooting right after 9/11 happened. Their first day, I think, was a day after, like the day after, maybe.
And with crazy. And having that, having been written before 9/11, and then being all about this, as you guys were saying, having this world event happening and getting your news from the television, not knowing how it's going to affect you, if it's going to affect you, if this is part of a larger thing or not, like all of that paranoia, uncertainty, fear. It feels 1,000,000% like a thing that was written in the wake of 9/11. And it's incredible that they went into shooting this movie with all of that stuff just fresh in their heads. All that extra textual influence is fascinating. But even beyond the performances, which obviously are great in this movie, and we've down to the smallest characters, Merrit Weaver, who is, everyone's favorite now on television as the pharmacist clerk, is fantastic in her one scene. The weird bug-eyed dude who's at the recruiting office, fantastic. You got Michael Showalter there for 10 lines of dialogue as like some burnout from Joaquin Phoenix's past, who gives us some.
What is their relationship? How do they know each other? That's one of the strangest things about this movie. I'm like,
I feel like they were high school rivals.
Yeah,
is the energy that seems to be there. But I love that bit. But the direction is very good in this movie. The way that scene we were just talking about is staged and shot, just with this very simple, like medium close shot, reverse shot from profile, with the TV illuminating half of their faces and the other half in shadow. And they're kind of whispering so they don't wake up the kids, and this intimate moment on the couch that gets so intense, emotionally intense. And the kind of the subtle score, the subtle push in. It's really beautifully staged, and there's some stuff in this movie. I also think this is M. Night Shyamalan's best looking movie. Now the Village looks great. The Village is a similarly really well shot movie and really well staged, with beautiful compositions, great camera movement. Obviously, Deakins did The Village, but Tak Fujimoto, who did this movie, is also a great cinematographer. And this is a beautiful movie, and I love the way, again, this sort of slightly European feeling. The compositions are always just, there's something slightly off. This just gives this audience this sort of subconscious unease throughout this movie. Like, I remember early in the movie, right at the beginning, when Mel Gibson is like waking up and going in, there's this angle on him that is just like a little bit too high, looking down on him, just a little unnatural. That scene you were talking about, when Cherry Jones is talking to them at the kitchen table, and the way that they have Mel Gibson placed kind of too close in the foreground and leaning in, is this unnatural framing. And you've got these great shots with a lot of like negative space or things center framed, which is usually a no-no in filmmaking because it just is it's a little bit unnatural. You want distance in the background, I mean a flat background. All of this stuff just kind of puts this in this slightly otherworldly Lynchian kind of universe alongside with the dialogue that all really works. It all comes together for me. Certainly. And I think Shyamalan did a really bang up job directing this movie, and with the pacing as well, with the breadth in scenes, letting the audience kind of marinate in these odd moments. And then when he gets to building the tension, these tense moments as well. And the editing's great, score's great.
One of the shots
movie.
One of the shots that really stands out for me is when they're all in town. They're all sitting in the pizza parlor together, and it's all center, and the camera just moves into the restaurant with them. And then you see Mel Gibson looking through the window, and you see M. Night passing by as the character who Ray, who was the one that caused the death of Mel's wife in this movie. And you just see him say, the kids ask, is that him? And just, yeah. And the camera follows him through the window. And then when that scene ends, the camera comes out of the restaurant with them all eating pizza together. And it feels very strange, very off that they're in the restaurant. And again, it's that lingering feeling of this family going through this tragic moment together and having, seeing the guy that caused the accident walking by and having all these emotions come back into their life, all four of them together. It's just a simple moments in this movie that works so effectively well. And then finally, when you get to the scene where Mel Gibson goes and visits Ray at his house, and with the big scene with M. Night basically saying, like, finally giving his apology to really what happened, and then the scene just ending with, oh, and by the way, I have an alien in my pantry, don't go in there. It's like, what? Like,
and takes off.
You just had this big emotional scene, and then it's like, oh, and by the way, there's an alien in my pantry, don't go in there. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, don't go in there. And it's like only in an M. Night movie does that make sense and work perfectly, because it does, and he peels off for no reason either. It's like only in an M. Night movie does this work so incredibly well. Like, this should not work, but it works perfectly, and I think it's just because of the commitment of really everyone involved. And Mel Gibson in that scene is just so goddamn good.
Oh,
He's so incredible in that scene.
His reaction when and actually, this is M. Night is not bad in this scene. People like to goof on M. Night for his acting. Honestly, he's pretty good in this.
This one's one of the good ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's pretty good here. But when he says that when he apologizes, Mel Gibson's where he starts to say something and then he swallows his words and he's trying to keep that brave face on that's a deeply affecting performance. I mean, that's really good. I can't imagine, like a Bruce Willis doing that. I cannot imagine a Kevin Costner doing that. Mm-hmm. Kind of almost anybody else who would have been considered for this. I don't know if they've got that in them. Mm-hmm. And this is it's just a really impressive piece of acting. And I love that scene, the scare, oh my God, even watching it however many times, the tension of the, like, now you're getting down on your knees and you're getting close. What are you doing? Good Lord. That scare, the famous scare, the one everybody talks about with the Joaquin Phoenix in the closet watching the home video from Mexico and the alien comes out. Mm-hmm. I mean, just there isn't unmotivated jump scares in this movie.
Right.
There is no, and this is where it is Hitchcockian. Mm-hmm. And Spielbergian more than a lot of the other horror that was coming around at this time. I mean, this was the big, like, K-horror remake phase, which, and some of those are great and some of those are not great, but they rely on a lot of, like, out of nowhere. This one, it's all about the build. It is all about, even if you know that when Mel Gibson gets really close, something's going to jump out. I mean, particularly in that scene, he gets close, he changes his mind, he walks away, then he turns around and goes back really, and then it ramps up really fast into the jump scare. Brilliantly laid out, that beat. And the same thing with the like found footage feeling little segment with that home video thing. They set it up. She says, this is going to disturb you. And then you're watching and you're like, is it going to be in this part? Okay. Is it going to be in this part? Okay. No. Is it going to be in this part? Is it going to be in this part? And then the thing, they show you way more than you think you're going to see. And that is the part where you're like, oh my God, it's just this totally, they're showing you're building up to something. And then they show you this full top to bottom alien. And it is so shocking. And then you get Joaquin's great reaction to it. But that's the Hitchcock thing where I don't remember what movie it was on that he had this anecdote, but it's so much scarier to see someone place the bomb under the table, like the ticking time bomb under the table, and then you watch the scene wondering when it's going to go off, than just interrupting something with an explosion.
Right.
And Shyamalan does that brilliantly, and this whole movie is that, but he does it brilliantly in this movie.
Well,
Yeah, that scene with Joaquin in the closet is for me one of the top 10 scariest scenes of all time, in my opinion. I think it's just so well done and so well acted. It's all about Joaquin's reaction, because seeing the alien walk by, yeah, that is scary, but it's his reaction to what he's seeing, falling all the way back into the coats and whoa, just like that reaction is just incredible and makes that scene. And like you said, Clay, it's about the builds to all the scares. Like this time, the scare that really got me is when they're in the basement and the hand comes around and grabs Rory Culkin. It's like you see the two lights come together and finally meet in the middle, and he's just like, what? And then you just see that hand come out. It's like, that's a perfect use of like that jump scare style of scares that we see in so many horror movies, especially like you said, around this time of, it's just a big loud noise and that's the scare. There's an actual build to all the scares from M. Night in this movie, and it's just so damn effective.
No, I would say that's one thing I appreciate about it. It's not how many jump scares how many times can we get people to jump out of their chair? It's more of it's almost the intellectual scare, You're, like you said, you're given all the information ahead of time. You're sitting there going, when, if, and whatnot, like the underneath when he's at the house, and you've watched enough horror movies, you've watched enough of these kind of movies, somebody's going to try to grab from underneath that door, but you've got so much tension built up, wondering, is it now kind of thing. Or even like like you said, when they're in the basement and whatnot, you see that arm for probably a good 1 or 2 seconds before he even starts reaching, just because it almost kind of mixes in with the background, to the point where it's not until he starts moving, and then your jump is not even necessarily on the arm grabbing Rory Culkin. It's more of their response to it, the dropping of the flashlights and what is happening, because you can't see what's going on.
Yeah, I think this movie has some of just the damn best scares, and again, all of them are set up so well. And again, it's the fact that when he goes into like the pantry scene, it's the fact that right before that we know that there is an alien in there, because M. Night himself says there's an alien in that closet. We know that it's going to be in there, and it's so great, so effective,
and it goes back to the characters,
the
legwork of building these characters, making them relatable, and making the audience empathize with them and sympathize for them. It's not just like, oh, don't go look under the cabinet because something's going to pop out and scare me as the audience. It's Graham, don't, like, you've got a family. Like, what are you doing? I don't want the character to get hurt. I care about the fate of this family. And that is something that so many horror movies forget to do or don't care to do, and think that just showing you the scares and the kills are enough. And look, I love a good schlocky, low class kills and scares horror movie as much as the next guy. But this is a different kind of thing. This is you care so much because you like the characters, and the comedy plays into that too. Like, if these were just morose people and that was it, you probably wouldn't like this movie as much. But because they're all a little dry and funny, and they have this very specific dynamic within their family, you really do grow to care about them by the end. And the other thing that plays into that, as you were saying, Casey, is this really goes for the drama as well. This movie, I mean, those flashbacks with the wife, that is possibly the most intense melodramatic situation I've ever seen in a movie. I mean, going up, and knowing that it's going to be the last time you talk to your wife, she's pinned. She's basically like Walking Dead. You're not Walking Dead meaning a zombie, but she's like she's dead, but not yet. And she's lucid, and you walk up and you can have a quasi normal 30-second conversation, and then she's dead. Like, Jesus Christ, that is I can't, like, no one's conceived of something that is as emotionally loaded as that bit. And it's something that could easily overwhelm a movie or seem hyper melodramatic. And I think maybe if they had shown you all of it, I mean, they do this brilliant thing where they show you the first little chunk of the flashback, then the second chunk of the flashback, and then when we're in the height of tension at the climax of the movie, when everything is as emotionally intense as it's gonna be. I mean, they show you the last bit of that movie when he is having his final realization that everything is connected, and they've got the aliens got Culkin, and all of that is building to the fever pitch. And then they show you, then I think it works because it almost, again, downshifts. The audience is brought to this precipice, and then they cut back, and all of a sudden we're back in the woods at night in a scene we've already seen before. And it builds to this second emotional climax before going back into the climax of the movie. And it's like a great screenplay and a great director can do. It is constructed like a great symphonic piece of music with acts and movements and things, recursive things coming back on each other. And it builds to this incredible pitch, that emotional moment when she is saying tell Bo this, tell what is the boy's name? Whatever, Rory Culkin this, swing away, Meryl. Like, God damn it, that just works like gangbusters for me. The way that all comes together, all of those movements of music, all crescendo and come together at the end there is just, it is a masterful piece of filmmaking, and goes back to Mel Gibson's performance again. Like, his two scenes, like leaning on a car talking to somebody in this movie. Oh man, just sells the hell out of it.
And again, with all those emotional scenes, that's two of the biggest things I've heard about. Two big criticisms of the movie is one, the swing away of how kind of cheesy that is, that line, and then I've heard of the alien design. But the thing is, I don't find either of those really cheesy in this movie, because it's all character stuff and stuff ingrained into the movie. With the swing away line, it's like, we've already set up that Joaquin was this great minor league baseball player. He has all these records in there, but he couldn't do it anymore. And Mel Gibson's wife obviously had seen him play a bunch of times and was cheering him on at some point in his career, and was in the stands telling him to swing away, Meryl. And that's something that came to her mind at the end of her life. And again, signs of things that need to pay off that later in life or later in this movie of coming to fruition here. And again, with the alien design, it's like, I don't care that they look like every single alien that's ever been in a science fiction novel or drawing or painting ever. It doesn't matter, because I'm so invested in the story and the characters. Really don't care what the aliens look like at the end of the day. They could look like Joe Schmo off the street for all I care. It's all about the emotion that's just been thrown into the movie, and it's the crescendo, like you said, Clay, of the big emotional scene of the wife pinned against the tree, and then having Mel getting this final getting to say these final words of what do you do in that moment? What do you say? What do you listen to in that moment? And so well acted and well paid off throughout this movie. It's just this great balance that M. Night follows and finds throughout this entire movie. It's just so well constructed. It's just one of those damn movies that just, like, everything works so well throughout it.
Yeah, and it's a simple but potent message too. Look, it's it has the like wraparound, and it has the through line of the lost faith, and connecting that literally to a I guess, I don't know who wears the collars. It was, I grew up, I don't need to get into my personal religious history. I grew up Christian, but not in the like a traditional Protestant or Catholic tradition. So is he
he's a Catholic priest?
Okay, he's a Catholic priest. He says he's a reverend at some point in the movie. But in any case, the lost faith connected to the idea of a Christian faith is kind of through the movie, and obviously that's a big thing for M. Night. His first 2 movies have really heavy Catholicism themes and things in them. So he's clearly personally a religious person. But he takes that, and that's just a good image, and it's good for the character. Obviously, we already talked about how him being sort of the father figure for the whole town is really important to the core of the character, and just his place in that little society. But this movie just has that larger theme of, yes, that there are no coincidences. Everything is connected. And that's a perfectly valid way to look at the world. I'm maybe a little bit more cynical than that, but I think if that's his worldview, I think that's an interesting thing to think about. And I think that that he lays that out really well in this movie. But also, even going beyond that, everything is meant to be in the sense that where you end up in life is inherently by nature where you're supposed to be, and everything that happened before that is part of that path. So it is important, and it is maybe neither good nor bad. I mean, I think when Ray Reddy says, like, if I had fallen asleep 10 seconds later, 10 seconds before, it would not have happened. It is such an absurd coincidence. It felt like it was meant to be. And it you could look at that as though he's trying to excuse himself or give himself, kind of forgive himself for what happened. But also, it's kind of hard to argue with that. Like, it is when things like that just happen. And, the fact that this happened before, the fact that she died in this way allowed the family then to live later on. And there is no arguing that our experiences affect us and change us and give us information for how we live our lives going forward. I mean, that's just true. And kind of building into this movie, giving it this grander idea of coincidence and faith, but really just being about moving forward and accepting and working through things that have happened, and then being able to live your life again, I think is a really lovely and potent kind of just very, very basic humane idea for this movie. And I love that he just is able to graft that onto this very fun, scary story of an alien invasion as well. I think it all really works for me in this movie. And it doesn't work for some people. They tap out at the third act, like you said, Brian. They think the swing away Casey thing is stupid.
Yeah.
And they think the asthma thing is stupid, and they think all that is stupid. But God damn it, like I said, I was very tired yesterday, and I was watching this. The end of this movie hit at around maybe 12:30, 1 a.m. But I was just full on tears at the end of this movie. I every time, I care so much about this family, and I find the filmmaking so effective that it's a potent movie. It's got scares, it's got laughs, it's got tears. It is a well-rounded entertainment. This picture.
Anybody who wants to complain about the whole swing away thing, it's like, we've invested so much time and energy in knowing that he was this minor league baseball player. Damn it, I want to see him swing that bat. And if that means he gets to do it on against an alien, cool. I at least want to be able to see. And I love the fact that we get to see him swing so hard that he breaks the bat too.
It's a great cutaway. Great little insert shot. Yeah.
I do want to point out too, because I mean, obviously we have mentioned how extremely well Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix are in it, but I mean, I at least also want to at least bring up the who we have as the kids, because I looked up, because I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to look Rory Culkin up was because this is basically the first. He had like maybe 1 or 2 underneath his belt where he wasn't attached to a movie that wasn't attached to one of his brothers. Like he's in Iggy, he's like he plays a younger version of Kieran in Iggy Goes Down. He's also in The Good Son kind of thing. But this is like one of the first ones that he's not attached to one of his brothers, who I think again just goes to show that overall the Culkins are a good set of brothers that have done very well for themselves over the years and whatnot. And this is the first thing outside of a commercial that Abigail Breslin did. So, the fact that, we've got M. Night going, and, for what little bits we get out of these two, I think that for child actors, I think they did extremely well, especially like you said, having to basically be at the level of Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix, especially in this, time in their careers.
And I think that's one thing M. Night doesn't get enough credit for is how well he directs kids. And I think that goes into him being a father himself and knowing how to talk to kids and children and understanding, they obviously think in a different way than an adult would, and you have to direct them in a very different way. You look at, from the Sixth Sense, having, Haley Joel Osment give one of the best child performances ever, and then you have Unbreakable has a child performance. This one does. You continue throughout his career up to even old now. He has great child performances in these movies as well. It's just throughout his career he has just been able to understand how to direct kids, and that's something I just don't think he gets enough credit for. And as a director, that's one of the hardest things you can do. You're always told you don't have animals or kids. And he does it nearly every movie as kids in the movie, and he does it so freaking damn well.
And he's got a dog.
Well, yeah, and his first movie as a teenager, the main character in Wide Awake, is that the one with Rosie O'Donnell?
Yeah. It's a kid. Yeah,
it's the main character's a kid. I mean, I think he also likes being able to have characters that we can look at what's happening through a child's eyes, from a child's perspective. I think that's really he does that really, really well in his movies. And the casting, oh my god, the casting, it's Abigail Breslin selling. You have to have for that line, there's a monster outside my window, can I have a glass of water line. That is such a hard to pull. You have to deliver that line exactly that way, or it doesn't work at all. And finding a kid, what is she, 4 years old? Finding a kid who can deliver these lines with that exact affect that is needed. I mean, either that's just the way Abigail Breslin is, and they cast her perfectly, or like you're saying, Casey, M. Night can direct these performances. And look, that line, that was the trailer line. That was the big line. That's what sold this movie, was there's a monster outside my window, can I have a glass of water? Incredible stuff. Yeah, the kids are just top notch in this movie.
All right, I think we're gonna go into final thoughts here, and I'll start first because I'm gonna just piggyback off what Clay just said there, of that line of "There's a monster outside my room. Can I have a glass of water?" Like that's a line that no human being delivers in any sense of. I've never heard anyone talk like that before. No one delivers that line in real life like that. But it's in this movie, and it's terrifying, yet it's everything in the character as well. And I think that's something that M. Night just balances so well in this movie, is great character stuff, great scares, great tension, great drama, great comedy, everything all in one. Everything I want to see in a movie is really present here in Signs, because it is endlessly entertaining. It's endlessly funny, heartbreaking, heartwarming, scary. It has literally every element you would want out of any type of movie, and it's just combined into this perfect amalgamation of everything M. Night was building towards in his career at that point, and everything he's done really since Signs. Of this is really like the perfect M. Night Shyamalan movie, like definition of an M. Night Shyamalan movie. That's Signs. That's this movie right here. And I think, and that's the reason why I hold it in such regard of, this is my favorite M. Night movie, because it has everything I want out of it, and it's done to perfection in this movie here.
For sure.
Am I next? I think that's very well said, Casey. Yeah, it is all of that. And I've been saying it, for the last, I don't know, hour we've been talking about it. I feel like I've been harping on it, but it is, it not only is it that, but it is his best looking movie. Like, I would love to see this in a theater again. The cinematography is lush. That score, I would love to hear that score in a theater again.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Maybe I'll get the chance. There's a lot of rep cinema in LA, and they do like to do series with the directors. Actually, I think they showed Old at the Arrow, where we record ScreenDrafts sometimes in Santa Monica. But I will definitely, the next time Signs, the next time they're doing an M. Night retro or something somewhere in town, I'm gonna go see Signs, and I'm gonna be so excited, because it is a very satisfying, incredibly satisfying time at the movies. You sit there in the end credits still absorbing the ending, feeling emotional, and just like, man, that was a good time at the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's easy to lament that they don't make movies like this anymore. M. Night's still making them, but Signs, he had a little bit more of a budget than, he gets to keep making movies because he can keep them small, keep them on budget. But like when they were giving him money, when he was getting the Signs and Village money, that was a special time because they got to be a little bit bigger. They got to have a little bit bigger stars. There was a little bit extra, you got to have Deakins, you got to hire Tak Fujimoto. There was a little more oomph to those movies in terms of a big screen experience. So those are the days.
Man, I when I finally got a chance to sit down and watch this, I've owned this on DVD since it came out on home video to purchase. I saw this movie in the theaters when it first came out and whatnot, but I probably haven't watched this movie in probably at least a decade. So it almost felt like a re-experience of this film and whatnot. I'm sitting here going, why has it been so long for me to sit down and rewatch this movie again? Because it did feel so fresh and new again to the point where it's like, you have to be able to experience this. I agree with you. I would love to be able to see this on a big screen and whatnot again, especially for the fact that we're on the verge of a 20th anniversary of this film and whatnot. I definitely think this is one of those ones where if someone hasn't had that opportunity to see it on a big screen, definitely should, because just like with some movies nowadays, we run that line of, is it worth going to the theater to go see a movie, or is it okay to watch it on the small screen because it doesn't have that big movie feel to it? I think this has the best of those both worlds, is the fact that it has the dramatic and the heartfelt aspect from the acting, everything like that. But this is something that definitely should be seen on a big screen because of just how dynamic it is at the same time.
And a controlled environment. Yeah. When they're down in the basement and Meryl drops the flashlight and it goes black, you want to be in a pitch black theater. Yeah. You don't want to be at home where you can get it, kind of dark, unless you've got some home theater thing where you're in the basement and it's all blackout or whatever. But like you want to be there. You want to be in the pitch black. When he sees the alien on the TV, you want to get even more riled up because other people are screaming around you. Like it's love horror movies in the theater, and in particular one like this that is so controlled in terms of its what it's showing you. It's man,
that's one thing
made for the big screen entertainment.
And that's one thing I do have to say I really appreciate about this is that it's horror, but it's also sci-fi, and he only shows you what needs to be seen, and most of it for the most part you don't see really anything until the end, because even like you said, even
it's got the Jaws effect to it it's glimpses of it and knowing that it's there, and then you see it at the end. It's like, yes, that's the big payoff at the end.
Exactly. Yep.
But unlike Jaws, and they knew that they didn't really have with Jaws, you have the buildup, and then once they show you the shark, they've got the goods. So where you can go from like, I'm terrified of the shark being unseen, then once you see it, you're like, that's an impressive fucking, that shark looks great. Holy crap, that shark is scary. They knew in this movie that if they did too much time with the CGI alien, it would not have the same effect as Jaws. So
that's true.
They show you just enough, like you were saying, just you never even see their ship or anything. Like it is so isolated and all implied and in their heads. It's more scary than if the big fucking ET ship had been hovering over the farmhouse or something. Well, I love they never have the beam shoot down and illuminate the farmhouse or whatever.
I love the closest thing we get is that book that Rory Culkin gets from that store. And
exactly.
That picture of the alien ship looking at the house. It's like, that's scarier than, like you said, showing ET's spaceship above the house.
100%.
And I think that definitely plays into his style and the fact that, though this is probably one of, obviously this is the biggest budget he had worked with at that time, there's very little CGI, because everything is either practical or, like you said, implied. We think we were like, oh, there's a ship in the air, but it's been cloaked. we see him in the cornfield, but you barely see his leg. You barely see an arm or anything like that. Otherwise, everything is implied or shadowed or anything like that. You don't get anything until that very end when they're like, okay, you know what? We need to use a little bit of that CGI money now, finally. And I love the fact that, it almost feels like it was done out of necessity to keep the cost of the quote unquote alien aspect of this movie as a minimum as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know that you're wrapping up, Casey, but I'm just going to keep thinking of new things I like about this movie and bringing them up and until you just hit the stop button. But and I love the building. I love that this isn't like a slasher movie where people are getting picked off or disappearing and they're like, who's doing it? What's going on? Just the cornfield scene is so scary, but seeing the leg turn and run away, it's like, why do they keep creeping up and then retreating and like what is the larger thing here? And then all the people have their theories, and it is that one big movie long slow burn where it's like, when are they just going to attack? And then when they do finally attack, it is the tension's been ratcheted up so high and the expectation has been set so high that it is this unbearable thing when it builds to the end. It is a perfectly structured, laid out, paced movie.
Guys, as much as we're talking about this, I want to just go rewatch it like right now, immediately, because it's making me love it. Even like I gave this a 5-star. This is a perfect movie for me. I'm like, I want to watch it again. So it's even more perfect when I watch it again because we've been talking about it so much and makes me love it even more. Like, this is one of those movies I feel like every time I watch it, I'm just going to love it even more than I have previous times. But the real big question I always end off with, and I myself don't even know an answer to this, is every time we talk about a movie each week, we like to pair it with another movie for your dream double feature of Signs and blank. So I'm going to ask both of you guys, what's your dream double feature with Signs? And I'm going to make one of you two go first because I cannot think of my dream double feature of this movie.
I'll go because it's actually what I was already thinking of. You've already made mention of it too. Is putting this with Jaws, and just mainly is the fact that we've got your adversary, your villain of the movie and whatnot that is basically completely shadowed, and you don't really get anything until the end of that third act kind of thing. So I think, especially for the fact that we've had, multiple times where, he was compared to like Spielberg. We're talking an early M. Night movie. We're talking early Spielberg kind of thing. So I think they definitely have a little bit of a parallel in terms of like the type of the movie, the build up, the end, and where they were at in their careers.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, with the double feature question, it's always like, does that mean things that are alike, or things, that as Brian is saying, that kind of are in dialogue with each other? I mean, I think it'd be interesting to watch because this is such a different kind of alien invasion movie, and there were a lot of these kind of at this time. Maybe watching it alongside something like that's far more bombastic, like an Independence Day, would be interesting. But I kind of maybe what I would do, and I would show Signs second, is I think it would be fun, mostly just because I want to see this movie in a movie theater. So I'm just, conjuring this, hopefully. But I saw it for the first time maybe about a year ago, and they referenced this movie in Signs. Well, they referenced the story in Signs. I don't know specifically this version, but that 1950s version of War of the Worlds. Which is it is that traditional alien invasion imagery like they have in that science book with the laser beams hitting the house, but like having that very traditional Hollywood. And it's another one, if I'm remembering correctly, at least part of it is in a city, but they were kind of retreat to a small town at the end of the movie. Seeing that more showing everything full bore, colorful, ships going around destroying the city, alien invasion movie, seeing a great classic version of that type of interpretation of this story, and then seeing this one, which is that really pared down, isolated, and everything we were talking about, how it's different version of the story. And then especially the fact that they reference War of the Worlds kind of visually and in dialogue. I think that would be an interesting thing to watch, that two very, very, very different approaches to an alien invasion. That's just a gorgeous movie. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. Oh my God. I don't know why it took me so long to see, but I watched the Criterion restoration of it, and it is just a candy colored treat with really impressive special effects. And it's a really, really fun movie.
I'm gonna go along with yours too, with another classic like alien invasion movie that's also very different than Signs. I'm gonna go with is it 78's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because you have again the exact opposite. This takes place in a city, and it's about the paranoia inside the city of an alien invasion, and not really knowing what to think of it, where it takes over other bodies. You don't know who's an alien, who you can trust, what you can do. A very different type of alien invasion story than Signs, but also has that still paranoia vibe to it, and also really fun characters in that movie as well that you love to follow. So I'd probably do Signs first, and then you do the B side is 78's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, just for a bonkers fun time after Signs.
Yeah, that's a great movie. That's one that has been drafted a handful of times on ScreenDrafts. That's what one we enjoy over there on our show.
And one I want to see on the big screen too, Invasion of the Body Snatchers 78.
Yeah, everything Philip Kaufman you want to see on the big screen. You don't want to watch the right stuff at home.
Next up, we're gonna jump into quickly our plugs here for the show. Quickly, next week we are going to be talking about The Visit from 2015, one of the newer Shyamalan movies that we will be discussing here. The movie that really kind of brought M. Night back from After Earth. Jesus Christ, that was a movie. Then The Visit happens. So we're bringing him back next week with The Visit from 2015. So that's something. If you haven't had a chance to watch it or rewatch it, go ahead and do so before next week. Brian, I know that is a first time watch for you, if I'm not mistaken.
It will be.
That'll be a fun discussion that we'll have next week. And we got to give our shout outs to where you can find us. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, Amazon Music, and you can subscribe to us on YouTube as well for a video version of the podcast. And Brian, where can they find us on social media?
Social media, other than YouTube, obviously. You can check us out: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd HQ, all at Backlot 605 on Facebook. Also, we have the South Dakota Film Community Group. Join the conversation. Film enthusiasts, filmmakers. We just like talking about movies and everything that we got going on.
And one more thing, if you'd like to support the show and get a little bit extra podcasts every single week, you can become a patron. Patreon.com/backlot605. You can join us there. $1, $3, $5 tiers. $5 tiers, you get that bonus episode every single week. We are going to be releasing our episode on Old this week, and then next week we are going to be talking about the #1 movie at the box office, which is The Suicide Squad. So both of those will be hitting Patreon very, very soon. So go check those out. And special thanks to our patrons here: Logan, Blake, Andy, Derek, Lou, Corey, Darren, John. Thank you guys so much. Hopefully you guys enjoy our probably heated discussion on both of those movies, because I think me and Brian have very differing opinions on both Old and The Suicide Squad.
Probably.
So that'll be fun. And Clay Keller, thank you so much for joining us. Where can they find ScreenDrafts and yourself on the internet, on the interwebs?
Yeah, we're all over the information superhighway. It is at ScreenDrafts on several different things. Twitter, because I run this stuff and I use Twitter the most personally. Our biggest presence is on Twitter at ScreenDrafts. We're also on Instagram sporadically. And all of the final draft lists go up on Letterboxd. So if you ever want to refer back to something, we put them up about a month after they air to avoid spoilers. But those are all up on Letterboxd, just at ScreenDrafts. And I'm at Clay Keller on all of those things as well. And the show is on all of the places, I don't know, all the ones that Casey said, and probably a handful of others. You can find ScreenDrafts, and we've got a Patreon as well with a bunch of bonus stuff all the time. So yeah, we're all over that. And when is this gonna go up, you reckon? This one we're doing right now, this episode?
Oh my gosh, the 11th today. Yes, the 11th. So Wednesday.
Oh, in a couple of days. Okay,
yes.
Great.
Yeah.
So coming up on the show, we've got our Bob Dylan draft will be fresh in the feed with my co-host Ryan and Mariah Gates. Coming up in a couple of weeks, we've got the thing we've been teasing for a while. Probably our most it's it's going to be one of our craziest episodes ever. It's what we call a mega draft. Usually we do 7 titles. This is a 20 title draft with 4 drafters. Drew McWeeny, Mark Bernard, and Jordan Crucchiola, and Winter Mitchell doing what we're calling the Planet Hollywood draft, which is Schwarzenegger versus Willis versus Stallone. The top 20 films from all 3 of those filmographies combined.
I love the fact that it's the Planet Hollywood draft. That is amazing.
Yep, the Planet Hollywood draft is coming, and it's going to probably destroy the show. So check that out. It's coming up.
Oh, that's awesome! I can't wait. That's gonna. Oh my god, that's gonna.
We need
like
to
you said,
have done that.
Yeah, that might be the screen draft to end all screen drafts for good or bad.
It's our most ambitious, probably to date. So
Hey,
there you go.
Maybe an M. Night might be on that list too. Who knows?
Maybe a couple of M. Nights might be on that list. You don't know. It's Bruce Willis is really the wild card here, because he is in more. He's in the most kind of broadest range of good. I mean, they all did some comedy. Stallone definitely did some drama. Bruce Willis has sort of the most eclectic career of all of them.
And the most straight to DVD.
So I'm not anticipating a ton of those on the list, but he's got his M. Nights. He's got a Wes Anderson. He's got Tarantino. Like, Bruce Willis, it's going to be interesting to see where his stuff lands on that list.
Definitely.
All right. Yeah, I can't wait for that. That's going to be incredible. Can't wait to listen to that. That's going to. Oh, I don't even want to imagine what the drafters are going to do on that. That's totally up to them. And I think, Clay, you feel the same way. You're glad you're not drafting in that one.
Oh, thank God. No, I am worn out from the X-Men Super Draft, so I'm gonna take a beat and recover from that. As
a listener, I am also worn out from that draft as well. But Clay, this has been awesome. This has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome to talk about Signs and just gush about this movie that we all love so much.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me on. I love talking about this movie. It's great talking to you guys. Love connecting with fellow Midwesterners. Although I'm sort of losing it. I'm a watered down Midwesterner at this point, but you guys are the genuine article. So it was great talking film with some Midwest brethren.
Absolutely. Clay Keller, thank you again. For Brian Mensing, I am Casey Kelderman. We'll check you all out next time on the Backlot here in South Dakota.